Welcome, Laura. Thank you so much for joining us on the Beyond Barriers podcast. We are thrilled to have you here and to share a little bit about your story and your journey, and what you've learned along the way. You are working in an industry that can be very male dominated. What have you learned and what has helped you become successful? Tell us a little bit about that.
Wow, that's such I could spend days on that. And I will say I'm still learning.
Yes.
And I think that's really important. I do work in financial services, specifically asset management. The joy of working in asset management is you're surrounded by a lot of smart people that are
Mhm.
curious, that are in it to provide income for people that are retiring. And many people that we provide services for people that are everyday policemen, firemen. So there's a bit of altruistic piece to that.
Yes.
But it is a collection of very type A people, mostly men, mostly white men.
Mhm.
And I will say that I've learned a couple of things along the way, but the thing that keeps me grounded is knowing who I am, being confident in my abilities, being confident that I know what I know, but
Mhm.
more importantly, being able to speak up to the things that I don't know and taking the opportunity to learn from people that have either done it longer than I have, are experts in a particular field, and allowing myself to be vulnerable in that
Mhm.
moment and learning from that, and then being able to add that to my um, quiver of arrows. And
Mhm.
that's been my success to date. And I think it's really hard as women to
Mhm.
put ourselves out, and
Yes.
be vulnerable.
Mhm.
And so that fear, I put it deep down in my stomach. Not sure if that's healthy or not, but I put it deep down in my stomach, and I put a smile on my face, and I put myself out there.
Mm.
And oftentimes, if I reflect on that experience, I say, ah, that wasn't so bad.
Mm.
And what was the takeaway? And it is my career. And I think the people that I work with, their careers, it's all about learning. You never stop learning. And so if
Yes.
you shut down and say, I'm an expert, then you've really inhibited your ability to grow.
Mhm. That's phenomenal and so insightful. And I love what you said about learning, because we here at Beyond Barriers, when we are working with the women in our, performance accelerators, we tell them that the new superpower is learning. It's all about just in time learning, and that you don't have to be that expert. You just have to be confident in your aptitude to learn really quickly. So I think that's really powerful what you just said. And I think the other thing that you mentioned is the, confidence and the vulnerability in saying you don't know what you don't know. But how would you frame that? Because I get women all the time to say, well, if I tell them they don't know, they're going to think that I don't know. They're going to think less of me. But I always tell them there's a way that you frame it. How do you do that? Say that there's a scenario and I asked you a question or asked you for a stat or asked you for some information and you didn't know the answer. How would you answer that?
It's a great question because I'm one of those people that prepares and prepares and prepares for every single question
Hmm.
so that I, for me to feel comfortable, I feel like I have to know everything.
Right.
And as I've gotten older, I realize that it's not possible to know everything.
Hmm.
And by feeling like you know everything, you miss out on a lot. And
Mm.
so when I'm in a meeting and there's a question around an investment strategy, I'm not a portfolio manager. I wasn't an analyst. I'm a talent strategist. And I know a lot of things about people and how they could run money or how they could be the best portfolio manager or the best analyst. But if they start going too far into the weeds around that particular topic, how to invest in certain types of fixed income, I say, whoa, this is like Latin for me. And I pull back and I then say, here's what I can be helpful with. And I can help you find a really good portfolio manager for the following reasons. And this is what's important relative to their ability to manage money and how they manage money and what makes them unique as a particular fixed income portfolio manager. I'm going to lean on you to help me with that. So I don't put out, say, I don't know. I deflect and then I put it back on them, because I realize in some cases it's a test.
Right.
They're trying to find a reason to make themselves feel better in a situation that's uncomfortable, because maybe this leader doesn't have a good team of investment professionals working under them. So they're vulnerable, or they're saying, what does this person bring to the table? And I want to be really honest what I do and what I don't bring to the table, because that's where there's an opening to bring someone else that has that expertise. And the other thing that I've learned, if I don't have the answer, it's better to say, wow, that's a really interesting question. I hadn't thought of that. Give me a minute and I'm going to come back to you. And not only do you come back with the answer in an incredibly well thought out way, but there's always something else you can add. After you reflect on a conversation or a meeting or a situation, it's an opportunity for you to go back to that person with the answer, but offer something else. And that's a really interesting takeaway that a lot of women don't think about. They're too nervous about what if they catch me, my belly versus, I'm standing strong. It's, but again, allowing yourself to deflect, be honest, but help them see what you do bring to the table.
I love that. That's such a tangible example that you gave. And the important thing I heard you say is having the clarity of what you bring to the table and what you don't bring to the table is so important. Can you talk about the key, or how did you gain clarity, or how did you kind of, one, gain clarity on your career path, but then two, gain the clarity on your strengths of what is your unique value proposition? What are the value cards that you bring to the table? That's powerful. And, did it happen overnight? Did it take you a while? Like, talk about that process.
I think it's gray hair. I was one of those people that couldn't wait till I'm 50. And it was like, why? Because I think as a woman, when you're 50, you have the ability to call bullshit. And you don't do that. You can't do that when you're 30. And so, being 50, the difference between 30 and 50 is 20 years, 20 really long years. And it's long life years. You learn a lot. Most of the time, that's when women have children, when women are getting married, when women are figuring out how do you manage your career, how are you climbing up the corporate ladder, you're taking on increasing roles of responsibility with an organization, you're maybe taking on leadership roles, you're asked to move different companies. The stakes, it's almost like going up a roller coaster. You can hear the gears as you go up the hill, and it's click, 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 click. There's always that fear. When are we going to get to the top? And are we going to go crashing down? And so the closer you get to 50, you realize that the top of the roller coaster isn't really a steep drop. You get to the top of the roller coaster and you look around and you say, did I like the top of this roller coaster? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And you have the opportunity to take what you've learned and pivot. And it's kind of going into that point you made around clarity and being clear with what you want. I think it's really hard. We always ask our children, what do you want to be when you grow up? I never ask my kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Who the hell knows? You're 7.
Exactly.
Right? I say, what do you like to do? Well, I like to act. I like to jump on the trampoline. Wow, that's really interesting. How do we do more of that? How do you going into summer camp or going into school? Maybe it's a gymnastics class that you can spend more time doing that. Well, you should continue to do that in your career and as you get older. So, by the time you're 30, you've found yourself in a career. Maybe it's media, maybe it's finance, maybe it's advertising, whatever the case, maybe it's technology, whatever the case it is, you say, well, what do I like about this industry? Okay, what are the things that I liked coming into my work? What did I like coming out of college? And you start to, it's really important for people, and a lot of people learn this coming out of the pandemic. What do you like to do? Because we
Yes.
spend so much time in our career that you can't, and for the most of us, not everyone, but most of us can reflect on what we like to do. We don't have to scrub toilets and work 3 jobs. There are some people that do, and God bless them. But for the most part, the women and people that are listening to this podcast have the freedom to think about what they really like, what's important to them, what makes them feel full, what do they want to do more of, what kind of culture do they want to work in?
Yes.
It's super important. What are they, and then just as important, what do you not like? I find
Yes.
oftentimes when I counsel people, I say, what do you not like? Well, I don't know. I'm like, well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Time out. You have to know what you don't like. And you have to be honest with yourself about what that is. And almost like set up, and I tell people this, set up a traffic light. So here's a list of the things you like, and here's a list of the things that you don't like. And as you approach your career, if any of those things go to red, don't go forward.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if they're green, great. If they start becoming yellow, it's time to reevaluate.
Yes. I love that analogy.
And so as women, we oftentimes, and I see this more with women than in men, and I'm making a generalization, we take a lot of crap that men just don't.
Yes.
We're very accepting. We were taught at an early age, don't speak up. Don't wear this, don't say that. And instead, you do need to wear that. You do need to speak up. You do need to do it in a thoughtful way, in a constructive way. But you should always stand up for yourself, no matter how uncomfortable. And so, if there is an opportunity for promotion in a role or a team that you want, go for it. And use your network to say, this is what I really want. How should I go about doing it? And really make it your mission to get out of your lane.
Yes.
I find so oftentimes women just stay in the lane, and they are very reactive with their career, not proactive with their career.
Oh my God. Yes. I love that you just said that.
They don't manage their career. I talk to so many senior women, and I mean, senior women managing 300 plus people. And I say, what does the last chapter of your career look like? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, you're 50. How do you not know this? Like, okay, let's figure that out. Or I see that they are not paid what they want to get paid. Why? What have you done about that? Or they say, well, I'm looking to leave my organization, even though I love the culture, I love what I do, I love my team, but I'm not getting paid what I want. Okay. Have you told your organization, your employer, your boss this? No. Why? So you'd rather risk all of the stuff that's really hard to create and go somewhere else just because you're too afraid, not unwilling, afraid to have that tough conversation.
Yes.
Worst case, they say no. Well, then there's your answer. Because, and again, you need to be honest. I feel like I'm underpaid. Do your homework. I'm underpaid relative to the market, other people in a similar role, similar organization. Um, and, and kind of put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super scary and it's super uncomfortable. But what I guarantee you, literally guarantee you, you will not lose your job because
Mm-hmm.
you ask for more money.
Right.
If you do it in a thoughtful, constructive way with information behind it, then shock, you may actually get it.
Yes, absolutely.
But if you don't, the only person you're hurting is yourself.
Yep. I mean, it's like you're making it, like I tell people, you need to decide whether you want to have this conversation or not. And deciding not to have the conversation is also a choice. You're making it, you're making the choice. But I agree with you of we have to get out of our own way. And like you said, it is most of the time, it's not because you're not willing to have the conversation. It's just that you're afraid to have the conversation and really understanding what is that fear about. And then, like you said, it's analyzing that fear. Well, I'm afraid if I ask for more money, I'm going to get fired. Well, what is the real likelihood of that? On what grounds, right? On what grounds could they fire you? And so really poking holes in some of these fears and saying, is that really realistic? And I love the example that you use because it's a very real example. And we hear it all the time of, I'm underpaid, or, I'm looking for a new job. And it's like, but why? And I think the golden thing you said was like, you've built all of this social capital already in this organization. You're going to have to go somewhere else and start over. And so, is it worth it? And, so I think that's so important. And you talked about these are like difficult decisions, right? And risks, taking risks. Over the course of your career, like what are some of the techniques you've used when you say, I have a really tough decision, whether it's around a courageous conversation or an ask, for a promotion or a raise? How do you make difficult decisions? What are some of the techniques or the tactics? Because you have really great examples and stories of like tangible, like how do you do it? So how do you make difficult decisions?
Well, one of the hardest decisions I ever made was starting my own company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was with an organization that knew ultimately I wanted to start my own firm.
Mm-hmm.
And when the time came, I took a huge risk by going to them in the fall before my bonuses was paid, which was
Mm-hmm.
the end of December, because I thought it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. And I said, I'm looking to start my own firm. I can work through a transition plan. That was not the case. A week later, after my boss said, well, I always knew you wanted to start your own firm, but I thought you had a third kid in you. So I felt like we had more time, which was super insulting to me.
Yes.
And I said nothing because I focused on what I wanted, the conversation at hand, and we agreed to a transition plan.
Mm-hmm.
A week later, I got word not to come back and that I would be talking to his attorney.
Wow.
And he found a way not to pay me my entire year. So
Wow.
I lost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I started my firm with the support of some amazing friends. One friend gave me space within 24 hours. All this happened super quickly because I didn't expect to be thrown out the door with no money. And I had a space from a very special friend. I had the support of many of my clients. And I had a couple of folks that started with me who were incredibly supportive, and we worked all the time. And I had the support of my husband because I had a 3.5-year-old and I had a 15-month-old at home.
Wow.
And he was willing to take the financial risk. He was willing to step up as the lead parent. I worked all the time. And some clients said to me, how's it going? And I said, oh, great. And he's like, no. How's it really going? I said, it's electrifying, it's intoxicating, and it's terrifying all at the same time.
Yes.
I lost 20 pounds. I worked 18-hour days.
Mm,
But what I knew that I needed to make a change because that other organization wasn't a fit for me anymore.
right.
And I also knew that I was going to be, a friend of mine said this to me, and it really has resonated. And I use this advice to other people when they're making a career transition. I had to jump off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you get fired, you know, somebody puts, pushes you or puts a
Yeah.
bullet to your back of your head, and you're like,
Mhm.
okay, it's done. I didn't have to do it. I had to jump off the cliff,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really hard. But I owed it to myself
Mm-hmm.
to push forward. And in the face of so much risk, it worked out, but I never lost my vision of what I wanted to create
Mm-hmm.
in my firm. And that mission has stayed. It's to add value to clients, to do executive search in a really thoughtful way,
Mm-hmm.
to uncover every stone, to think about diversity, to be able to give back to others. And 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 as that has built, and I've had lots of challenges running my firm, I've learned a ton.
Mm-hmm.
I always say I have 4 children. 3 that I had from my stomach, and 1 that I created on my own in Third Street. And
Mm,
just 2 years ago, as the pandemic turned, we added another business to executive search, the advisory business. And that was, again, staying true to the mission of what I wanted to create in a firm, adding value to clients. And so now we can do team lift outs and small firm acquisitions.
mm,
And it's also an extension of us being able to look to investment teams and people and saying, are you in the right firm? Are you able to do what you want to do? Are you in the right culture? Are you able to get the platform to help you? And finding maybe a better lily pad for some of
right.
these people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really gratifying to me.
Mm,
And so I was able to take a huge risk. I had the support of my family, which was, I don't think I could do it without it.
mm-hmm.
I had a lot of mother's guilt. That
Mm-hmm.
that is not to
Yes.
be ignored for a working mother. Mother's guilt will kill you.
Yes.
Um, and I have a firm that I'm incredibly proud of. I have a team of people that work with me that is incredible. I have 3 young women that I'm raising that see me and want to be like mom. Oftentimes they'll listen in to some of the conversations so they can learn. Um, it's gratifying, but not without a lot of fear.
Wow, that is so inspirational. I mean, I can see the, but what I see that was your intrinsic motivation was that clear, compelling vision you set for yourself and what it is that you wanted to achieve.
Mhm.
But can we dig into a little bit about the mom guilt and the and the importance of the supportive spouse, right? And how did you set those, like how did you create the boundaries and how did you like deal with the mother's guilt, or did you not? Like what did you learn from that, and what would you tell the audience if they're dealing with that but they still have big aspirations? What should they do?
Yeah, that was probably the hardest part of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a mentor that, when I had my first child, she called me, and incredibly senior woman. And she said, congratulations. And I said, oh, thanks. And I thought it was going to be a warm, fuzzy call. Instead, it was the opposite. She said,
Mm-hmm.
congratulations. And I said, oh, thanks. And she said, now you're not perfect anymore. I said, what are you talking about? It was like the biggest backhanded comment. And she said, because you never are going to be able to be 110% devoted to work, or
Mm-hmm.
110% devoted to your husband or your friends. You're going to have to choose. And there are going to be times that, as hard as it's going to be, something and usually multiple things have to suffer. And it will change every day. It may change within the hour. And so it's a constant emotional juggling act. And I will be honest, there are days, there are hours that I am not the best mom.
Mm.
Often, more times than not, I'm probably not the best wife.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the person that takes it the hardest is me, because I very rarely focus on me.
Right.
So I get it last, because I take care of everybody else before I take care of me. And only now am I dealing with that. So it's a constant work in progress. But the mom guilt, when I came back from my first maternity leave, um, I seriously thought that I would quit my job and we'd live on my husband's salary. And at the time, my husband was a journalist.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew we'd have to move somewhere else. And I was willing to give that up because, you know, as mammals and human beings
Yes.
we are, there is a nature versus nurture. Your
Mm-hmm.
body says you have to take care of this offspring.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain says, no, I don't want to give up my career. I don't want to do this. But then the body takes over.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're leaking everywhere you go to work. You've still got a postpartum. You're figuring out, how do you make this all work?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to focus. And then the nanny calls or your spouse calls and says, oh, they just took their first whatever. And you're like, oh my God, I missed this. How did I miss this? Because of course most of us are type A and we want to
Mm-hmm.
see all of it.
Yes.
So, but what I realized every day that I came back, got a little easier. Of course, there'd be bumps. I'd miss the first something.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that I was a better person, therefore a better mother, because I was doing something that I wanted to do.
Mm.
And that was a good example for me to set. I also say the working mom's guilt, our stay-at-home mom friends, not always so helpful.
Right.
They're happy to judge.
Mm-hmm.
And now, being close to 50,
Mm-hmm.
I know that comes from insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yeah.
just as insecure as we are, just in a different way. And
Right.
oftentimes they're jealous that we get to ride a train. We get to have this luxurious thing called travel. We get to dress up. And it takes a while to realize that. But finding someone at work or a really good friend, or and sometimes a spouse, I think the spouse is harder,
Mm-hmm.
to talk about the mom guilt. And the
Mm.
spouse is harder because, if it's not a female, men don't have this. My husband has no idea what I'm talking about. Does not feel it at all.
Yeah.
And I do, and it's very real.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That is so insightful and I think really powerful for our audience to hear. And you talked a little bit, you touched on, having mentors and that mentor who reached out to you and said, hey, you're no longer going to be perfect, and
Mhm,
was kind of a truth teller for you.
mhm.
Can you talk a little bit more about, one, the importance and the power of having mentors like that kind of are the truth teller and kind of help coach you through that? But thinking also on the career side, the power of identifying mentors and sponsors that are going to help open the doors and help you, do the thing you wanted to do from a career perspective, as well as being a mother. That
Mhm.
it's not a this or that, but a this and that with the help of mentors and sponsors.
Mhm.
What was key for you? Was it, how did you develop some of those relationships, or how did you even identify those people?
Identifying, I'll leave for a second, because I think that's harder.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things around mentors is it's not a one size fits all.
Right.
It's really important to have different kinds of mentors, because because everybody has an expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have senior men that are mentors
Mm.
for certain things that I rely on them for.
Mm-hmm.
I have senior women that I've reached out to. I also have younger women,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to know, what are they experiencing? What are
Mm.
they reacting to? When we were figuring out how to recruit folks that are Black heritage.
Mhm.
Um, we went to some what we call friends of the firm,
Mhm.
and that identifies Black heritage,
Mhm.
and we had a really honest conversations. How do you want to be reached out to? A
Mm.
lot of firms want people that you know are Black heritage, but I don't want to just call you because you're Black. That
Mhm.
just seems wrong.
Right.
This is how I feel. So how do I approach people, this demographic, such that it's genuine and it's real? And I was a little afraid about having this conversation because it's kind of taboo.
Right.
And this person, and there were multiple people. So persons that I reached out to, the first person was the hardest.
Mhm.
And I went out to someone that I had known for probably 20 years.
Mhm.
And I had developed a relationship irregardless of the color of their skin.
Mhm.
And um, I felt like I knew him really well. And so
Mhm.
I started the conversation by saying, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. This makes me super uncomfortable. So I put my vulnerability out there.
Yes.
And I said, I don't know if I'm saying this the right way. I don't want this to come across as anything other than trying to be helpful.
Mhm.
And the response I got was above and beyond what I could have imagined. And so
Mm.
he kind of became my mentor
Mhm.
with something that I was, and I grew up in the South. So the whole racist
Mhm.
and the black, white, just from growing up, it is in your face. And I realized that so much of that was on me.
Mhm.
And when I was able to kind of put that out there and say, I need help with this, um, it just it opened up a whole new window, and it made me
Mhm.
see things in a very different way. And more importantly, it helped me find a way to communicate with him and other people that identified as Black heritage in a way that was helpful.
Mhm.
So I put that out there only because it's something that I think a lot of people can identify with as something that's challenging.
Mhm.
Um, when in mentors, when you think about inside an organization,
Mhm.
colleagues, that's challenging because you're putting yourself out there. And what happens if they say something to someone or they know something about you that you're a little uncomfortable? That's a tough one to figure out who is someone that you can trust
Right.
and can also respect.
Mhm.
And it kind of depends on how long you've been in the organization, because these relationships take time
Yes.
for you to find that person. And oftentimes, is your earlier in your career, going back to college professors,
Mhm.
going back to family friends,
Mhm.
um, that's really helpful. And the family friends, seeing if they can connect you.
Mhm.
Or if there's somebody if you're in a basketball league or you're in a tennis league that maybe is someone that's much older and doing something, and say, hey, can I grab a coffee with you? Or I'd really like to
Mhm.
get your advice on something.
Yeah.
Chances are that person will be able to give some thoughts. I've rarely come across, and I'm trying to think if I ever have, someone that's not willing to be helpful.
Right.
But always go to someone that you trust first,
Mhm.
versus just going to someone that has a shiny title or is in the role that you want,
Right.
because that might put them in a difficult position.
Mhm.
First, can you trust them? Is their advice going to be real and additive? A
Mhm.
lot of people have agendas, and you don't know what that agenda is
Right.
always. So it
Mhm.
can be tricky,
Yeah.
for sure. The best piece of advice I give to people on mentors is the older you get, the easier it gets, because you meet more people
Mm.
and you start to see, who do you gravitate towards, who
Mhm.
inspires you, who do you respect, who seems to take an interest in you,
Mhm.
who's genuine. Those are all really important. And it kind of dovetails into something else that I really want to highlight for women in particular, is references.
Yes.
So we all have the opportunity to work with people and show our value. When you move through life or through your career, you're building references. And when you leave a job or you leave a position, make sure you continue to take care of those relationships. It's like growing a garden. I call it the reference garden. You have to go back and weed. You have to go back and fertilize. You have to go back and water. And so keep those relationships up, because those are the people they're going to say to folks like myself, so other search consultants or other people in their network, hey, Laura Pollock, she's really great for the following reasons, or she'd be really interesting for XYZ.
Yeah.
They're going to be your biggest advocate.
Yes.
And they need to know what you're doing. They need to know why you're doing it. They need to know what you're interested in. So even it can, and again, people forget to manage those because it just, I'm too busy. No. That's your greatest asset is your reference tree.
Yes.
And take care of it so well.
That is so powerful. And I love the analogy. You have some amazing analogies. I love the whole reference garden because you do have to nurture and maintain those relationships. You can't let them get cold. I usually tell people you don't want to let those relationships get cold, because the last thing you want to do is have to go microwave them to kind of like speed them up, because that feels disingenuous, right?
Yes.
If you're constantly, like you said, weeding and fertilizing and nurturing those relationships, they're there to support you. And I think that's extremely powerful, because we all know that half the time the opportunities that come your way are through that community, through those referrals, through those references. In my history, back in the day, I was head of diversity recruiting, and I was, so shocked to find that, 80% of our hires were all from referrals.
Yes.
By the
I'd be
time
retired by now if it was the opposite.
Exactly. I mean, because by the time the job posting hit the, hit the job board or whatever, we already had, 20, 30, 40, referrals from internally of like, hey, I think, this person would be great. So that is so important. And one more thing I wanted to that you said was really powerful that I wanted to bring back to the surface. You said at the very beginning, mentors come in all shapes and sizes, like there's not one size fits all. And I think what was really powerful that you said that I want to highlight once more is that you had several mentors that didn't look like you. There were men, there were, sponsors and advocates that, you didn't go seeking out just other women that looked like you.
Yes.
You made sure you identified, who has the success, who's been successful, and how can I learn from them? And I think that is really powerful, because sometimes being, myself, a Latina, a female, being part of the LGBTQ family, I was a lot of the times the only in the organization. And if I would have waited for someone to look like me to kind of help coach me or mentor me, like you said, I would have had to retire. Like I would just, I don't know where I would be. So I think that's really powerful that you said that some of your, immediately you were like, you had a lot of male mentors. And I just want to drive that point to our audience, because sometimes they get caught up in the whole affinity of, I need someone who looks like me, thinks like me. But what would you
learn from people that are different from us?
Yeah.
And with your mentors, you've got to put yourself out there. Oftentimes I'll go to people that are my mentors, or that I really respect and really respect their opinion. I say, I'm having a really hard time with X. Or I may say, I'm trying to break into this market. How do I do that? So I'm showing that I don't know something. I'm showing that we don't have a track record in this space. I'm showing vulnerability, and I'm asking for help. Yeah. Women have a really hard time asking for help. Yes. We think we can do it all.
Right. And we've got
to we can. But we need some scaffolding.
Yes.
And so your mentors help provide scaffolding, but
Mhm.
scaffolding only works if you're willing to let it surround you.
Mhm.
And so I've learned really great um sage pieces of advice, and I've gotten additional relationships and different opportunities by allowing myself to be open and honest and vulnerable and ask for help.
Mm. That is really, really insightful. And I'm gonna leave that there. I think this has been a phenomenal conversation. So I want to dive into the questions that we close all of these with, because we feel like it helps people also learn something, interesting about you. So I want to jump into the lightning round questions that we shared with you earlier.
Mhm.
Before we close out. So my first question is, what book has greatly influenced you?
So I was talking to some folks in preparation for this, and I said, I don't read nonfiction. When I finish my day, I need a break. I need a
Uh-huh.
break. Um, and I thought about this, and rather than giving one of my, historical fiction books that I just
Yeah.
enjoy, I thought about my favorite children's book
Mm,
that I love to read to my children. I even read it to my 13-year-old. It's called The Rabbit Listened.
mm,
And it talks about all these different animals. The elephant, the blocks fall apart, and the kid's really upset, and all these different animals come, and they say the elephant said, "Let's try to remember how it was put together. Let's try to remember." The snake says, "Who's knocked it over?
mhm,
Let's go find them." Um, and then at the end, the rabbit comes and says nothing. And the boy just sits with the rabbit. And instead of having a reaction, he just talks to the rabbit about how he feels. And
mm,
the rabbit makes no judgment, says nothing. He just listens. And at the end, the boy's able to recreate this castle of blocks,
mhm,
and it's better than it was before,
mm,
all because the rabbit listened.
mm,
And so often we're so focused on what we have to say
mhm,
and getting in the last word in a conversation. And as a leader, the best thing you can do is listen.
mhm. Yeah,
And I say, listen, because you might just learn something. I tell
yeah,
that to my 13-year-old all the time.
yeah.
And so that's the book that I've actually learned the most from.
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna have to go buy
So
that
it's The
book.
Rabbit Listened.
The Rabbit Listened. Awesome. What is your favorite inspiring quote or saying?
This is easy. Happiness isn't getting what you want, it's wanting what you get. That
Mm,
is happiness.
yes, I love it. What is one word or moniker you would use to describe yourself?
I thought a lot about this. And I can tell you what my friends, my husband would say about me. H- How how I would describe myself is um fearless.
Mm, I love it. I can see it. Yeah.
And it's not that I am not afraid and scared. Of course I am. But I know that that is something that is going to bring me down versus allowing me to rise up. And
Mm,
so I put the wrap around and say, I am going to try in the midst of a lot of things that are incredibly fearful. I don't want to be driven by fear.
yeah.
That's
Move
that's
forward
that's a, that's
despite.
a that's like a straitjacket.
Mhm.
So I want to be free, and so I try to live my life as being fearless.
I love it. Moving forward despite the fear. Love it.
Mhm.
What is one change, like a habit, a behavior, some action that you implemented that made your life better?
I hired a housekeeper.
Oh, yes, yes. Oh my God. I'm there with you. It's just like,
So that's the advantage of working.
Yes.
Is I at home don't have to do the things that I don't want to do.
Yeah. And it's okay.
Mhm.
You have to be mindful of your time. What is the ROI or the ROE, return on energy?
Yes.
And I did the same thing. It was a hard thing for me to do at first, but after I did it, I realized I can now focus on what really matters.
Mhm.
That's fantastic.
I
Love
now, when I come home, have time with my kids.
it. Mhm.
I'm not doing dishes. I'm not doing laundry. I'm not tidying up. I'm able to spend quality time with my kids because I don't have enough of that.
Mhm. I love it. I love it. And this is my favorite. So let's pretend, Laura, you're about to walk out on stage and there's 1,000 people in the audience. What is the power song that would be playing when you walked out on stage?
So I thought a lot about this one. So I'm really glad you sent me these ahead of time.
Uh-huh.
I thought it's Respect by Aretha Franklin.
Mm.
I love the song, but
Mm.
more importantly, I love Aretha Franklin. I love
Yes.
what she did for music, what she did for women in a time that, and what she did for Black
Mm-hmm.
people
Mm-hmm.
in a time that was not so favorable
Yes.
to all of that.
Mm.
And she's a legend in that space. And so I love the song, but more importantly, I love the artist.
So inspiring. I can't wait to put together a playlist of all the songs that our guests have given us. And I think it'll be such an inspirational playlist that I'll have to play it whenever in those moments I need to evoke some inspiration. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been a phenomenal conversation.
Same. Thank you.
I can't tell you, I can tell you already that our audiences are going to love this. And it's definitely one for us to make sure all of our participants in our program, the people we coach, but most importantly, our audience to hear what you have to say. I think it's definitely powerful. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.